Hello folks, this is Singing Toad, and today what I'd like to talk about is my Morakniv Garberg. And this isn't going to be really a review per se, but just more of the modifications I've done to the sheath. For the eagle-eyed viewer of you may have already realized that something doesn't quite look right about the sheath that this knife is sitting in, and I'm going to get into that momentarily. Before I do so, I am just going to go over some basic specs of the knife itself, just for those people who are not familiar with the Morakniv Garberg or have never seen one of these before. Let me just set this sheath off to the side here. And so this particular Morakniv Garberg has the standardized rubber, or it's like not rubber, it's a hard plastic of some kind, but it's quite comfortable grip that's on it. It is a full tang knife. It does run all the way through out to the end here. This end does have a nice 90-degree sharpness, so you actually could use this to scrape a ferrocerium rod. However, you also have a nice 90-degree back spine, which you could easily scrape a ferrocerium rod with, which I've done multiple times. It does have your standard Scandinavian grind on there, or Scandi grind, and now you can probably look and see that something doesn't quite look right. There's like two different shines going on here. That is because I did an emergency field sharpening of this guy and I didn't quite get my angle right. So unfortunately I have kind of, the camera's not going to show it, but there is sort of like a secondary bevel. It's not a true Scandi. It does come from the factory with a true Scandi, but my sharpening job out in the bush was rushed, and I damaged the knife and I had to sharpen it, and I wasn't at home and couldn't do it properly, so that's what happened there. But I do intend to fix that and put it back to a true Scandi again. Now this model is in the stainless steel, and I can't remember what exactly the type of steel is that they use. It's like a 1427N or something. I forget what it's called. I don't remember. If I can think, I'll annotate it in the video later when I figure out what that is. But it's a good stainless steel. It's not, terribly awesome. It's no S30V or 20CV or M390 or anything like that. But it holds an edge well enough, okay? And for what you should be using this knife for, you really shouldn't be dulling the edge up unless you're like me and you decide to drop it on the riverbank and it's went edge down into a bunch of rocks. Rocks will damage the edge of your knife. I can guarantee you that. Okay, dropping your knife from into the riverbank is going to mess it up. I can guarantee you that. Don't do that, folks. But anyway, so let's just get on with some basic specs here. Now I don't know the weight of this knife. And weight doesn't really matter to me all that much. I mean, it's fairly light. Okay, like you're not going to notice this thing on your belt. So overall length is roughly 8.5 inches, just a little bit below, or a little bit above 8.5, sorry. The blade itself, let's just bring this back a little bit here. So you're just over 4 inches with the blade. Now the actual sharpened edge, now this is something about this particular knife that's different from a lot of Moras. Most Moras, the edge goes straight into the handle. Because the handles, the molding of the handle is put in after the main grind has been cut, where this one you can see stops a little bit short, and I actually prefer that. That actually makes this easier to sharpen. I always find it's really difficult to try and get that last little bit by the handle. And if I can stop knocking my tripod around here, this junky tape measure that I got here, don't buy cheap tape measures, folks. So, like I said, you're just over 4 inches on the total blade length. But if we actually go by the sharpened blade length, can I do this? I'm going to do this here. Yeah, so if we just kind of, there we go. You're just pretty much right on 4 inches if you actually count the sharpened edge. So you're about 3/8 of an inch depth, and the thickness is, let's do this here. What do we got here? About 1/8 of an inch, if I'm reading that correctly. It's kind of hard to see through the viewfinder here. But anyway, in the handle, I guess, for those who want to know the length of the handle, that matters to you. What do we got here? So you're about 4.5 for the handle, and then if you count that little bit that sticks out the back, another 1/8 of an inch or so. Of course, you have a lanyard hole. Let's put that away. And I have this chartreuse para 550 paracord on there. This is just, again, if I drop this thing like in a riverbank, it makes it very easy to see it and get it back so you don't lose it. Because if you drop this out in the bush in a pile of leaves or on the forest floor, being black and whatnot, it's just going to disappear. So this makes it a little bit easier to spot it. So with some just a quick size comparison. All right, so we're just going to bring in here a standard American penny, and wow, geez, this knife is tiny, and I have really huge hands. Just kidding, folks. This here is a Spyderco Delica. And we'll compare it against one of its own. Here is the Mora Companion. And you can see that the Mora Companion is not that much difference in the handle length and the overall blade length. You can see that sharpened bit I was talking about, how it comes all the way back to the handle here where this doesn't. The major difference is kind of the robustness. You got more depth and the thickness. So if we do that here, you can really see the thickness. Okay. All right, so that's enough for the comparison aspect of this video. And I'm actually just going to move him just down here. So he's still on camera, but geez Louise. I'll stop knocking the stuff around here. So he's just on camera, but let's grab the sheath. Where did I put it? All right, so here's the sheath. Now, the original sheath that this guy comes with, there's actually a couple different sheaths you can get. There's like a hard plastic one that's very simple. There's one that's got like all these like different connections on it for, you know, if you want to be tactical and mounts to a bag or your whatever. And then there's this leather one. Now, the standard design of the leather one is it's got this flap that folds over with this button snap right here. And what I didn't like about that is the fact that every time you wanted to use the knife, you had to open up this huge button flap, take the knife out, then this thing would flap around. You either have to rebutton it, snap it back up, and then it was just flapping around, being annoying. And when you're out in the bush and you're hunting and stuff, and you're trying to be quiet, and you're not dropping your knife in a riverbank and scaring every deer from miles around to be found, you have you know, a problem with your knife flapping around when you draw it out for some reason. And so I decided that I didn't like that design. I like form-fitting, kind of like dangler-styled sheaths. Now, I don't have my Groman Canadian belt knife with me at this exact moment, but it has a dangler-style sheath, and I really, really like the design of that sheath. It's just form-fitted, friction fit, and the knife fits in there perfectly, and it you know, it hangs low on the belt. And so I decided that I would trim this off, and all I did is I just used, well, first of all, I took a little, it was like a little marker pen that I used. It was like this white marker pen, and I just kind of traced out exactly where I wanted to cut it. Then I just used a razor knife and cut, and then I very carefully trimmed all the edges, and then I just took a little bit of sandpaper and went around the edges to smooth them so that they're not sharp anymore. And then I just took a permanent marker and I colored it all in so that it looks almost like it was done by the factory. Now the button snap, it's still here. I cut that out because I thought that's kind of cool. It's got, you know, the Mora name in it, and I didn't want to leave it not there. And I'm not sure, I might do something with that later. I might figure out a way to maybe attach a ferrocerium rod or something to it. I don't know. If you guys have any ideas of what maybe I should do with this little button here, type it down in the comments. I'd be interested to get your feedback on that. But anyway, what I did to form fit it is I did a wet fitting. So I soaked, oh yeah, I also punched a drain hole. This thing had no drain hole in it. So if you happen to fall into the river while you're carrying your knife while you're out in the bush, and water gets in here, there's nothing to let the water drain out. Now, this being a stainless steel one, it's not overly important, but if you did have the high carbon steel version, or the carbon steel version, excuse me, which is also an option, then you wouldn't want to get your knife wet. So, or at least keep it wet. That's very, very bad. So I used an awl. I actually used an awl from one of my Swiss Army knives to punch through that and put that little hole in there. So that's an improvement I did. But how I wet formed it is basically I soaked this sheath after I had cut it off and whatnot. I soaked it in some warm water, not hot water, but warm water for about an hour. Then I took the knife and what I did is I took the lanyard out, I wrapped the knife in cellophane, and then I inserted the knife in to the sheath, and then I just used my thumbs, and I also had a clamp, and I just clamped it in a few places, and I just well, actually I did it like this. I form fitted. You can probably see my nail impressions, my thumbnail impressions right there. Yeah, see it? But I just form fitted it, and then I let it sit, and then I came back at it the next day, did the same thing, soaked it for about an hour, formed it, and then I let it sit overnight, and then I let it sit for about 4 days altogether. And then after that point in time, I was able to, and I left the knife in, by the way. The knife was wrapped in cellophane, so I didn't have to worry about the knife getting wet and getting messed up. That's important. Make sure you wrap the knife up, whether you wrap it in tape or something. You know, you need to wrap the blade up, but something that is going to keep the form. So what I did is I actually put a little bit of painter's tape around the edge of the blade so that the cellophane wouldn't be cut by the edge. And then I wrapped it all in cellophane. So I left the knife in. Every time I form fitted, I soaked it with the knife out. Obviously, I'm not going to soak it with the knife in there. But then once I put the knife in and then form fitted it, I then left the knife in overnight, and then took the knife out, soaked it, then put the knife back in, form fit it. And I did that a couple of times, about twice, I want to say. But then on the second time I did it, I then left the knife in, and I left it sitting in a place, in a warm, dry place for about 4 days. And when I took the knife out, it was, like it just, oops. You can hear that. You hear that click? Ugh. Listen to that again. Click. All right, one more time. See? So, I mean, there is no way that's coming out. All right. And that's just a lot more handier. So now, when I'm in the bush and I need to draw this knife out, it doesn't make a ton of noise coming out. In fact, it's very quiet. Right. So I can easily draw the knife out, do whatever cutting task I have to do, and then I can carefully put it back in, and I can put it in quietly. Okay, it doesn't have to make a clicking noise. When you do it fast, it makes a little clicking noise because it's been form fitted here. Okay, so anyway, that's what I really wanted to show you guys. Not so much the Morakniv Garberg itself. A lot of people are familiar with these, and I can tell you right now there are many other knife channels on YouTube that do a much better job doing a review of this knife. But I just wanted to showcase the modification that I did to the sheath to just make it more something that I like better. Okay, so if you guys are interested in something like this, it's very easy to do. I'm pretty much already explained it in the video, but there are other videos on YouTube that show how to do wet forming. So you can check those videos out if you want to attempt this yourself. Anyway, that's all I had to say about that, and this is Singing Toad. Thanks very much for watching. Singing Toad signing off.